Skimmer. Hey folks, Wish SE up here in New Hampshire. Had a request from a couple subscribers asking me to talk a little bit more about the Travis Haley signature trigger, the Skimmer trigger for the Glock series of pistols. So one of the things I wanted to do was just very briefly show you some of the physical differences as it relates to the outside of the gun and the trigger rather than the inside and taking the whole mechanism apart. I've showed that in another video, but what the major difference is where the finger engages in the trigger and its distance. The other major difference is where the trigger both begins to break and it's reset. So it's much more distinct. Here, break, reset. So on the left is a Glock 19, Gen 2 Glock 19, on the right Gen 4. And the Travis Haley trigger, signature trigger, the Skimmer trigger, is here. It's difficult for you to see, but there is a difference in the distance between the edge of the trigger, where the trigger is against the back, and where the front of it is. And in this case, it's just under an inch. And where you have on the original type of Glock trigger, which is just a little bit over an inch, so maybe 0.2 of an inch difference longer here versus the Skimmer trigger. The other thing that you really notice on this is the trigger, once you start to press, immediately you feel the wall. So it's the distance from here to here. Already I'm starting to feel the trigger engage. I continue to press and the break is here. Then the reset is very distinct and it's right back out to where it was. So the distance from here to where you feel the trigger begin to engage is very short. The older Glock triggers, the distance is here, it's spongy to some degree, and then the trigger breaks. So back out, all the way out. So I have this distance, quite a bit of sponge, and then the trigger breaks. Now this is a 3.5 pound connector, so that might have something to do with it. But as I'm pressing the trigger, I've got this distance. The Haley signature trigger, the Skimmer, as I'm pressing, immediately I'm engaged right here. So the distance is not all that squish up here. It's here, and then it breaks. Now once it breaks, you can also see there's a slight space there toward the back. So the distance from the time you engage the trigger till it breaks is that far. Traditional Glock, we have this amount of distance. Remember this versus that. So you're engaging the trigger much faster, and the trigger itself is resetting in a very distinct way. Click, and it's right there. Sponge, 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 break. So it's almost as if it's a slower reset driving out. Yeah, let's see if we can do a better measurement here. So end to the back, so the very tip of the trigger through to the back is 3/4 of an inch. The very tip of the trigger to the back here is more like an inch. So that, 20-25% difference to me does make the trigger feel better. Travis Haley, Skimmer trigger on the bottom, regular Glock trigger. And again, it's this distance from here to here versus here to here that you really notice. So that's a quick update and insight into subjectively what the trigger feels like. It is, in my opinion, worth the money. Significantly smoother, more direct, and which means, for me anyway, accurate hits on target, faster, more effectively. Thanks so much for watching. Stay safe. Skimmer trigger, Travis Haley. Here, break. 3.5 pound connector, regular Glock parts. Squish, 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 break. Travis Haley, Skimmer. Very, very distinctive here. So, trigger off, finger off, press. So all of this to here is the distance. Regular Glock trigger, 3.5 pound connector. Here, squish, press, 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 press. There's the break. And it doesn't look like much, but that little bit of squish makes a big difference when you're on target.